They told me I was dead, not over the phone, not in a letter. It was at the bank, of all places. A Tuesday morning, quiet, with only two tellers behind the glass, and that awful music they always play. I was there to transfer some funds, nothing dramatic. And yet, the young man at the window looked at me as if I were a ghost. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but our system shows that the account holder has passed away." I laughed, just a short, confused chuckle. "Well, I'm very much here, breathing, standing, talking to you." He frowned. "It's not a joke, ma'am. We've received official documentation. Death certificate name matches yours. Date of death, September 18th. I stared at him. That was 3 weeks ago. He nodded, as if that confirmed something. The next half hour was a blur. Calls to supervisors, verification of ID, more frowns, no apologies, only confusion, concern. "You'll need to resolve this with the county records office," someone finally said. "We can't proceed until the system recognizes you as alive." I walked out with legs that didn't feel like mine. The air outside hit colder than it should have for October. I sat in my old Buick and tried to remember what, exactly, I had signed recently. It was a month ago. My son, Charles, had come by. Rare these days. Said he was helping update our family insurance. "It's just paperwork, Mom," he'd said. "Just to make things smoother if something happens." I remember the pen in my hand. I remember not reading the fine print. And now, officially, I was dead. My fingers trembled as I opened the glove compartment and pulled out my small notebook. A habit from decades of homemaking and budgeting. I wrote down everything. In the back pages, I found it. Sept 14. Charles brought insurance papers. Signed. I drove straight to the county office. The woman behind the counter wore too much perfume and had eyes that softened only slightly when she looked at me. "I need to request a correction," I told her. "There's been a mistake. I'm not dead." Her eyebrows lifted. She typed something into the computer. "Name?" I gave it. Her eyes widened slightly. "We do have a certificate of death registered under your name, yes, submitted by a Charles Gray." "Son?" My heart went hollow. "Yes." She leaned in, voice lower. "You'll need legal assistance to reverse this. The system recognizes you as deceased. You're going to need to prove you're not." Back home, the house felt colder than usual. Charles hadn't called in weeks, not even a message. I'd thought he was busy, wrapped up in his firm, the new house, his own children. I thought, foolishly, that we were fine. I made tea but didn't drink it. My hand wouldn't stop shaking. What had he done? By evening, I pulled out the envelope where I kept all our old documents. I found the insurance file Charles had brought, his signature, my own, the company name. I typed it into my computer and called their hotline. It was late, but they had a night team. "Yes, Mrs. Gray," the woman on the phone said, after verifying my details. "Your policy was processed last month. There was a claim filed 2 weeks ago. It's already been paid out." I sat very still. "To whom?" I asked. "Charles Gray, listed as sole beneficiary." I don't remember hanging up. I only remember the silence after. Thick, heavy, like something inside me had died, even if I hadn't. Charles had declared me dead. For money. I didn't sleep that night. The house groaned with its usual aches, pipes clicking, the wind catching on the eaves. But I lay still in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my own breath. I was 78 years old and legally dead. My son had made it so. And worse, he'd gotten away with it. At least for now. By morning, I had a plan. The insurance company, Vanguard Mutual, had a local office in the business district. Newer part of town, glass buildings, clean sidewalks. The kind of place I rarely visit anymore. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy coat with the brass buttons and my low-heeled shoes, the ones I'd worn to Charles' wedding. A strange thought crossed my mind. They'd be appropriate for a funeral, too. The receptionist was young and nervous-looking. I introduced myself. I need to speak with a representative about a wrongful life insurance claim. She blinked. You mean wrongful death? I looked her square in the eye. No. Wrongful death would imply I had, in fact, died. I haven't. A few phone calls, some shuffling of papers, and I was escorted into a conference room that smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant. After a few minutes, a man in a blue suit entered, mid-40s, polite in the way professionals are when they think you're either senile or about to sue them. Mrs. Gray, he said, shaking my hand. I'm Andrew. I understand there's been a situation. Call it what it is, I replied. Fraud. He didn't flinch, but I saw something tighten in his jaw. I laid the insurance file on the table. I signed this, yes, but I didn't know what I was signing, and I certainly didn't authorize my son to declare me deceased and collect a payout. He opened the folder, flipped through the pages. This looks like a standard policy, ma'am. Signed and notarized. Is it standard to file a death claim without a body? I asked. He hesitated. Well, we received a death certificate. Forged. Or perhaps not forged. Perhaps filed by my son under false pretenses. Either way, you paid out a policy on someone who is still very much alive. I leaned in. You're going to fix it. He exhaled, closed the folder. Mrs. Gray, I'm not saying you're wrong, but this is a serious accusation. There's a legal process. If what you're saying is true, your son committed insurance fraud and possibly identity theft. These are criminal offenses. I'm aware. He stared at me for a long moment, then gave a short nod. I'll open a formal investigation, but understand, we'll need you to file a sworn affidavit. You may have to appear in court. This isn't something that goes away with a phone call. I don't expect it to, I said. I just want it to start. On the way home, I stopped by a diner I hadn't visited in years, ordered coffee, sat in the corner booth, letting the noise of other people's conversations fill the silence in my mind. I kept thinking about the way Charles used to hold my hand when he was a little boy, how he used to write me birthday poems, crude, clumsy rhymes full of heart. He had dimples when he smiled. He used to call me Mama Bear. At what point does a child turn into someone capable of this? The waitress brought the check. I left cash and a generous tip. Before I stepped outside, I called Charles. He answered on the third ring. Hey, Mom, he said, too casually. Everything okay? I know, I said. There was a pause. Know what? Don't do that. Don't lie to me. His tone shifted. Okay, wait. Slow down. I went to the insurance company. I've seen the documents. I know about the death certificate. I know you collected the money. I know what you did. Another pause. Then, it's not what you think. It never is, I said bitterly. I was going to tell you. When? Before or after you moved into a bigger house? Mom, please. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Charles? His voice grew quiet. I was desperate. The business was failing. I was drowning in debt. I didn't know what else to do. You were always so careful with money. I thought you'd be okay. So you made me disappear? I didn't think it would go this far, he said. I just needed time. I thought I could fix things, then Undo it somehow. I didn't think you'd even notice. Didn't think I'd notice. The words lodged somewhere deep, like a needle to the bone. I'm not going to scream at you, I said. I'm not going to beg for an apology. I'm going to let the consequences speak for me. His voice snapped into panic. Mom, wait. I ended the call. The next day, I stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Not because of age. I'd long come to terms with the lines around my mouth, the silver in my hair, the skin that had once been taut and was now loose with time. No, this was something else. A look in my eyes I hadn't seen in decades. Resolve. For so long, I'd kept quiet. Smoothed over family tensions, given without asking anything in return. But this was different. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't distance. This was theft. I called my lawyer. Henry Morton was 81, slightly stooped, and had been handling my affairs since before Charles hit puberty. He still used a paper calendar and insisted on fountain pens. But he was sharp, and more importantly, he knew me. Joan, he said, as soon as I was seated in his office, what kind of mess are we in? I told him everything. At first, his eyes narrowed. Then they widened. By the end, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, his face unreadable. This isn't just a mess, he said. This is a full-blown funeral parade. He chuckled at his own joke. I didn't. Can we reverse it? I asked. The death record, the insurance fraud, all of it? Yes, he said simply. But it'll take time. You'll need to be officially declared alive again through the county registrar. Affidavits, identity confirmation, sworn statements. The insurance company will handle their own investigation, but will need to run parallel legal action to restore your status. And Charles? Henry raised an eyebrow. You want him prosecuted? I was silent for a long moment. The word felt heavy in the air. No, I said finally. I want him to understand. I want him to feel what he's done. But prison? That's not my aim. Henry nodded slowly. Understood. Then we'll focus on reclaiming your identity and your estate. I blinked. My estate? He leaned forward. Joan, do you understand what your son tried to do? If you had died, legally or truly, everything you own would have gone through probate. As your only child, he would have inherited the house, the investments, the accounts. That insurance money was just the appetizer. The room felt colder. All these years, I murmured. I thought I was helping him. You were, Henry said gently. But he's no longer the boy who needed your help. He's a man who wanted your absence more than your presence. I left the office with papers in my bag and a different kind of weight in my chest. Not sorrow, not anymore. Something more solid. Clearer. I called Sarah that evening. My granddaughter had just turned 26 and was in her second year of law school, the first in our family to pursue higher education since my own father. She picked up on the second ring. Grandma? She said, surprised. Is everything okay? I need to tell you something, I said, and I don't want you to interrupt. She didn't. I told her everything. From the bank visit to the call with Charles. Every detail. By the end, there was silence on the line. Then, oh my God. I'm taking steps, I said. Legal, financial. But Sarah, I'm going to need a witness, someone I trust. I'll do anything, she said, voice tight. You shouldn't go through this alone. There was a long pause. Then she added, quieter. I believe you. About him. I never doubted that, I said softly. You've always had your eyes open. After we hung up, I sat in my armchair and stared at the mantelpiece. Family photos. Charles as a boy, grinning with a missing front tooth. Sarah on her graduation day, cap crooked, her smile beaming. And one photo in particular, Charles and me, maybe 15 years ago, both laughing at something off camera. Had it been real? Maybe. But real things can rot if left unattended. Love too. Later that night, I received a message. Charles, Mom, we need to talk. Please, don't make things worse. Worse? As if I had forged a death certificate, as if I had stolen something. I didn't reply. The next day, I called the county registrar and began the process of reclaiming my life on paper. Sworn affidavits, birth certificate revalidation, proof of identity, a legal resurrection. The woman handling my file was named Camille. She was polite, efficient, and professional, until she looked up from my file and whispered, "I'm so sorry. I've never seen a case like this." I gave her a tight smile. "You will." The worst part wasn't the paperwork. It wasn't even the humiliation of standing in an office where your existence has to be verified. It was the language they used. Correction of death record. Erroneous registration of demise. Living subject reclassification. I sat across from Camille as she typed furiously, clicking between forms. She never once looked at me like a person. Not unkindly, just not personally. I was an administrative problem in slacks and a wool coat. Nothing more. "We'll need 2 notarized identity confirmations," she said, "a current photograph, and 1 living witness who can testify under oath that you are, in fact, alive." I slid Sarah's name across the desk. "My granddaughter. She'll be here Monday." Camille nodded. "And you'll need to sign this declaration. Once processed, it may take up to 3 weeks to remove the death status from federal systems. Social Security, medical, financial, tax records, they've all flagged you. What happens in the meantime? You don't exist," she said, without blinking. I let that sink in. No prescriptions, no bank access, no Medicare, no legal standing. "I suppose the upside," I murmured, "is that I can't be sued." She smiled thinly. "I wouldn't test that." When I returned home, the house felt different. Not darker, but changed, like a place where someone else had lived for years and I'd only just returned. I walked slowly through the rooms, noticing the little things. The quiet hum of the fridge, the slight tilt in the frame of Charles' 4th-grade portrait, the way the window in the laundry room always whistled when the wind blew west. I was here. I was alive. But legally, I was a ghost with keys. The phone rang once that afternoon. Charles again. I let it ring. Later, I pulled out the box from the hall closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. It held old tax returns, letters from my husband, Derek, and a collection of receipts, large ones, from over the past 2 decades. Charles's business loan, his first house down payment, 2 years' tuition for the private school he insisted Sarah attend, then pulled her from when the divorce came, a used Toyota, then a new one for safety. Line after line of evidence that I had not just given, but given quietly. No expectations, no repayment schedule. Just the silent hope that kindness would echo back. It hadn't. And yet, I wasn't angry. Not in the way people think of anger, loud, fast, wild. No, this was something colder, slower, the anger of someone who's finally done hoping. I brought the box to the kitchen table and began organizing everything into files. "Sarah," I wrote on one folder, "trust." Another. That night, I emailed Henry Morton. Subject: amendment to estate plan. I told him I wanted everything: the house, the accounts, the safe deposit box, moved into a trust in Sarah's name. Not upon death. Now. Irrevocable. Immediate. He replied in under 20 minutes. Joan, you're serious? Yes, I wrote back. And I want Charles' power of attorney revoked immediately. Understood. I'll prepare the documents. And Joan, good for you. Good for me. I sat in the quiet, hands folded, eyes on the wall clock. I couldn't sleep, but I didn't feel restless. Only aware, for the first time in years, that my life was still mine. Just before midnight, I received another message. Charles. Mom, please. Can we talk? You're making a big mistake. I stared at the screen. He still thought the mistake was mine. I used to think love was a kind of shield. If you loved someone enough, truly, deeply, without condition, then nothing they did could truly harm you. Not permanently, not in ways that stuck. But that morning, sitting at my kitchen table, fingers curled around a warm mug of tea, I realized I'd been wrong. Love doesn't shield. Love exposes. It opens you up like a wound, and if you're not careful, it keeps bleeding long after the injury. I looked at the papers Henry had dropped off. The trust forms, the revocation of power of attorney, the statement of legal identity reestablishment. My name in bold print. My signature needed at the bottom of each page. And I couldn't stop shaking. Not because I was afraid, because I felt something close to grief, but not for myself. For the years I'd spent believing this all meant something. The money, the quiet sacrifices, the way I'd shrunk myself, softened my opinions, made room for Charles' pride, his ego, his increasingly fragile sense of being the man of the family. And now I was sitting here, declared legally dead by the same man I once carried into the world. There was a knock at the door around 10. When I opened it, Sarah was standing there, no makeup, hair pulled back. She had her father's jaw, but not his eyes. Hers were sharp, focused. I came early, she said. Hope that's okay. Of course it is, I said. You're always welcome here. She stepped inside and paused in the hallway, looking around like she hadn't seen it in a long time. I always forget how much this house smells like you, she said. Old lady and furniture polish? I offered. She smiled. Lavender and clean linen. We sat down, and I handed her the folder marked Trust. I'm putting it all in your name, I said. Her face paled. Grandma, no. I held up a hand. Don't argue, just listen. She did. You're the only one who ever came here without asking for something, who called just to say hi, who noticed when I was tired. That means something. You may not need the money now, but one day you might. And I want to know it went somewhere. Good. Not entitled. Not rotten. Sarah didn't speak. She just nodded, tears welling in the corners of her eyes. I'll sign everything today, I said. Henry's coming later this afternoon to notarize. She opened the folder, scanning the contents. Her voice shook when she spoke. Does Dad know? No, I said. He doesn't know anything. And I intend to keep it that way until it's done. Grandma, he's going to lose it. I hope he does, I said calmly. Might be the first honest reaction he's had in years. Sarah looked down. He's not a good man. No, I agreed. But I kept pretending he was, because it made it easier to live with myself. A long pause. Then she asked, Do you remember when he made me return the birthday gift you gave me? I blinked. What? I was 13. You gave me that silver bracelet, the one with the little heart charm. He said it was too expensive and I had to give it back. I don't remember that. I cried for an hour in the bathroom. You never asked why. I looked away, shame curling under my ribs like smoke. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, Sarah said gently. I think he's been trying to erase you for longer than you realize. Erase me. That word sat too easily in my mind. Later, after Sarah left, I sat in the living room and stared at the picture on the mantel. Charles, maybe 5 years old, holding a kite, face lit with pure joy. I wondered what he would say if he saw me now. This version of me. The one he didn't think existed anymore. Maybe he wouldn't recognize me. Maybe that was the point. The house was quiet that night. Not the soft, comforting quiet of peace, but the brittle kind, like silence held its breath. I sat at the dining table with the old box again, the one filled with receipts, notes, fragments of a life spent giving. I took out each paper slowly, like artifacts, and in a way, they were. I found a check stub from 1998, $7,000. Charles, down payment for Honda Accord. I remembered that conversation clearly. He'd stood in the driveway, pacing, frustrated because the loan hadn't gone through. They treat me like a child, he'd said, like I'm not worth the risk. I'd walked inside, opened the safe, and written the check without a word. Next, a tuition invoice. Community college, second semester. His grades had been average at best, but he insisted this time would be different. I want to make you proud, he said. I paid it. Then there were the letters, handwritten thank you notes, short, polite, and hollow. I kept everyone. There was one from the year after Derek died. Charles had written, "Thanks for helping me cover rent. Things are tough. I'll make it up to you." He never did. Next, an envelope marked 2005 business. That year, he came to me with fire in his eyes and a spiral-bound notebook filled with plans, a fitness studio. "Personal training is the next big thing," he said. "I've got the drive. I just need a little help getting started. $35,000. He opened it, closed in 9 months. "I'm not giving up," he said afterward. "This was just a test run. I didn't ask for a penny back. Never did. Somehow that became the problem. When someone gives without condition, you forget it's a gift. You start thinking you're owed." I closed the folder and leaned back, letting the years press down on me. So many chances. So many yeses. Not because I was afraid of conflict, but because I wanted to believe I mattered. Not for the money, for myself. The worst thing wasn't being used. It was the quiet realization that it had never even occurred to him to stop. My phone buzzed. A message. "Charles. Again. I know you're angry. I deserve that. But this isn't the way. You're hurting the family." I laughed. Out loud. A short, humorless sound that startled even me. Hurting the family. The family I was written out of. The family that buried me on paper and didn't think I'd notice. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into the spare bedroom. The one we'd always called the guest room, though no guest had stayed there in years. I opened the closet and pulled down the fireproof box from the top shelf. Inside, the deed to the house, my birth certificate, Derek's will, and one last envelope, thick and yellowed, marked simply, "Emergency." Inside was $4,000 in cash, my rainy day fund. I laid it on the bed and counted it slowly. Then I placed it in a fresh envelope and wrote Sarah on the front. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about making sure the things I built, the small, quiet things, didn't disappear with me. I called Henry the next morning. "Come by today," I told him. I'm ready to sign. Sarah arrived just after noon, a canvas tote over her shoulder, still in her university sweatshirt and jeans. She looked young and serious. The way you do when the world has started to show its cracks, but you're not broken yet. "Grandma," she said, stepping inside. "I ran into Dad in the parking lot." I raised an eyebrow. "At your school?" She nodded. "He was waiting by my car. Said he just wanted to talk." I poured her tea. "And did you?" "I listened," she said. "It wasn't the same." "What do you mean?" "He wasn't angry. Not the usual defensive thing. He sounded scared, panicked. He asked if I knew what you were planning, if you'd changed your will." I didn't respond, just handed her a cup and sat across from her. "He said I was being manipulated, that you were confused, that you didn't understand the consequences." I let out a breath through my nose. "That sounds about right." Sarah leaned forward. "Grandma, he doesn't know about the trust yet, but he suspects. He'll know soon enough." "I didn't tell him anything," she added quickly. "I never would." "I know, sweetheart." She hesitated. "Do you want me to cut him off?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw the worry in her face, the conflict. It wasn't just about loyalty. It was about the ache that comes when someone you love becomes someone you don't trust anymore. "No," I said gently. "You don't need to take sides." "But I do." She nodded, eyes glassy. "It's just, I always hoped he'd change." "So did I said. "But hoping doesn't make it so. Sometimes love doesn't fix people. Sometimes love just keeps you around to watch them fall further." A knock at the door interrupted us. Henry had arrived. He stepped inside, looking like a man out of time. Blazer too large, shoes too stiff, briefcase too heavy. But he smiled as he saw us both. "Ladies," he said, "shall we get to work?" We did. At the dining table, Henry laid out the documents one by one. The trust, the transfer of deed, the account protections, the revocation of Charles' power of attorney. Everything we'd discussed. And more. I signed each page without hesitation. Sarah watched quietly, her hands folded in her lap as her name was written into the future. When it was done, Henry collected the papers and placed them neatly into his case. "It's all official now," he said. "Irrevocable, immediate. Everything you wanted." He looked at me carefully, as if expecting regret. I offered none. "Thank you, Henry." After he left, Sarah and I sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "Do you think he'll hate me?" I reached for her hand. "Maybe. But not for long. He's not angry at you. He's angry that I stopped letting him take." She squeezed my fingers. "I don't want to be like him." "You're not," I said. We watched the light fade through the window, shadows stretching long across the floorboards. I thought of all the nights I'd spent waiting for Charles to call, all the birthdays I'd sat by the phone, just in case, all the Christmas cards signed with nothing more than Charles. That part of my life was over now, not gone, but closed. I wasn't dead. Not anymore. And I wasn't his. The house felt different after that. Not warmer, not colder, just clearer. Like a fog had lifted. I moved through the rooms as if they'd returned to me, piece by piece. The old hardwood under my slippers, the ticking clock in the hall, the drawer that always stuck on the left side. Mine again. All of it. It took 3 days for Charles to show up. I heard his car first. That grating, aggressive engine that always seemed too loud for our quiet street. He didn't knock at first, just stood on the porch, pacing. Then finally, a fist to the door. 3 sharp raps. I didn't rush. When I opened it, he was already mid-sentence. "We need to talk." I stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. "No coffee, no chairs. This isn't a visit." He looked thinner, eyes shadowed, but still wearing that expensive coat, still trying to hold on to the image. "I just need 5 minutes." I stepped aside but didn't offer a smile. He walked into the living room like he still owned a piece of it, looked at the mantel, the old photos. His photo, the one of us at his graduation. He stared at it a second too long. "You've changed your estate," he said finally. "I spoke to someone at the county clerk's office. They said you revoked my authority." I did. "And the trust?" I met his eyes. Done. Irrevocable. He let out a short, harsh breath. "Why would you do that?" I tilted my head. "Do you really want me to answer that?" "Mom." His voice cracked, and I saw it. The mask starting to slip. "This is going to destroy us." "No," I said quietly. "You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess." He sat down without asking, rubbing his forehead. I was desperate. "I know. It wasn't supposed to go that far. But it did. I thought if I could just get ahead for once, I'd make it right." "You can't make death right, Charles. You can't file your mother's death certificate, take the money, and then drop by for Sunday dinner like nothing happened." "I panicked," he said. "The business was tanking. The credit cards were maxed out. So, you buried me." He looked up, and for the first time, I saw shame that wasn't just performance. It sat heavy in his face, pulled at the corners of his mouth. "I didn't think you'd find out," he whispered. That hurt more than anything. Not what he'd done, but that he thought I wouldn't notice. "You've been writing me out of your life for years," I said. "This was just the final signature." He rubbed his hands together. "So what now? You cut me off? Forever?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "That part's up to you." He blinked. "Up to me? You want redemption? Earn it. You want trust? Build it. But don't come here expecting comfort." There was silence between us. Finally, he stood. "I didn't think you had this in you." "Neither did I said. He paused at the door. "Sarah won't return my calls?" "She's not a fool. I miss how it used to be." "So do I said softly. "But that's gone now. And maybe it should be." He didn't look back when he left. I watched his car disappear down the street, the sound of the engine fading. Then I sat on the porch in the fading light, the air cool on my skin, and let myself feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not regret, just air. The phone rang the next morning while I was deadheading the gardenias. Old cordless thing, the kind that still chirps when it rings. I wiped my hands on my apron and let it buzz twice more before answering. Something in me already knew who it was. "Hello?" "Mom." His voice was careful, too careful. "I was wondering if we could meet." I didn't respond right away. "It's about the house," he added quickly. "I have a contractor friend. Says the back porch could collapse in a few years. Water damage under the joists." I looked out the window at that same porch, solid as the day Derek built it. It stood for 40 years. I imagine it'll hold a bit longer. He paused. "Still, better safe than sorry." Silence stretched. "I'll buy the coffee," he said, as if that would sweeten the air between us. I agreed to meet him at a diner near the highway. Neutral ground, somewhere public, where voices are tempered by the presence of strangers. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting in a corner booth, stirring a cup of coffee that looked barely touched. "Hey," he said, standing awkwardly. I slid into the booth and didn't smile. We ordered eggs for him, tea for me, and waited in that stiff silence that comes when two people both know something's broken, but neither wants to admit who dropped it. "You look good," he offered finally. "You look tired," I replied. He half laughed, rubbed the back of his neck. "I've been dealing with a lot." "I'm sure. I wanted to say thank you," he continued, "for not going to the police, for not pressing charges." "That wasn't kindness," I said. "That was self-respect. I didn't want to see my name on a court docket as the mother who sent her only son to prison. That's not a mercy. That's shame." His face tightened. "I'm trying to make things right," he said. "No," I corrected. "You're trying to make things comfortable again." His mouth opened, then closed. "I gave you everything," I said. "Years of help, support, silence. And when I became inconvenient, you erased me. That's not desperation. That's cowardice." He looked down at his plate, pushed the eggs around with his fork. "The trust," he said quietly. "Is there no way to reverse it?" There it was, the real question. "No." He nodded, as if he already knew. It's a lot. Everything. The house, the accounts, that was meant for the family. I am the family," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You made me feel like an outsider in my own life. You don't get to speak of legacies when you buried me to gain one." He swallowed hard. "And Sarah?" "She knows," I said. "Everything." "Does she hate me?" "She's not built like you. She doesn't hate easily." "Will she give me a chance?" I didn't answer right away, just sipped my tea. "You'll have to ask her." He looked old suddenly, not in age, but in the way guilt weathers a person, makes them small. "Do you hate me?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm done loving you like a mother who expects anything back. That chapter's over." He winced. "So what now? We never speak again?" "That depends on you," I said. "I'm not going to chase you. I won't beg for visits. If you want to be in my life, you'll have to show up. Not for money, not for paperwork. Just show up." The check came. He reached for it. I didn't stop him. The next morning, there was a card in the mailbox. Not a letter, not a text or email. A real card. Heavy envelope. My name written in Charles' unmistakable handwriting. That precise, slightly slanted script he inherited from Derek. Inside, a folded piece of white stationery and a check. The note read, "Mom, I know it's not enough. It never will be. But I want to start somewhere. Please use this for whatever you need, or don't. I understand either way. Charles." The check was for $5,000. I stood on the porch for a long time, looking at it. Not because I needed the money. I didn't. But because for the first time, I couldn't tell if this was guilt, manipulation, or the beginning of something real. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe I'd stopped needing the difference to be clear. I didn't cash it. Not yet. Instead, I made a copy and slid it into a folder labeled Truth. That's what I'd begun calling it in my mind. The thick binder of notes, affidavits, account statements, insurance documents, and now this. A record of what had been taken and what I'd decided to take back. Later that afternoon, I received a call from Sarah. "I think Dad's trying," she said cautiously. "He sent me a check," I replied. Her silence on the other end said more than words. "Do you think he means it?" I asked. She sighed. "I think he means something, but meaning something and changing are two different things." "Yes," I said. "They are." She hesitated, then added, "He wants to meet. Me and him. Coffee." And will you? I think I have to, she said, if only to make peace with what I already know. I didn't try to stop her. I wouldn't. We all have to come to our own reckonings, in our own time. That night, I opened the fireproof box again, not to check on documents, just to look, to feel the weight of what I'd gathered. Not in dollars, but in decisions. The will was updated. The trust was solid. The accounts were locked. I was no longer vulnerable, but I wasn't cruel either. The truth is, I didn't want to punish Charles. I wanted him to stand in the aftermath of what he'd done and feel the absence of what he'd lost. Not just the money, but the mother who once made excuses for him, who softened every landing, who kept the porch light on no matter how late he came home. That woman no longer lived here. And the new one? She locked her doors at night. The next morning, I called Henry. I want to draft one more document, I said. What kind? A letter, not legal, just personal, to be delivered only if I pass before I choose to speak to Charles again. Understood, he said, his voice quiet. I wanted to say this. I loved you. But love without respect dies quietly. You didn't kill me, Charles. But you made me vanish. And that's a kind of death I won't live with again. Henry didn't comment. Just said, I'll prepare the envelope. When I hung up, I stood at the window, watching the neighborhood move. A dog barked. A neighbor's child rode a bike too fast down the hill. The mail truck made its slow, methodical crawl down the street. The world kept going. And so did I. The letter from the insurance company arrived on a Thursday. A thin white envelope, clean type, the company's logo embossed at the top. No apology, no emotional flourishes, just a formal notice. We have concluded our internal investigation. The claim paid to Mr. Charles Gray has been deemed fraudulent. Legal proceedings will be initiated unless funds are returned within 30 days. I folded the letter and placed it in the file. Truth was getting heavy now. Not just with paper, with clarity. Later that day, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Charles. Mom, I got the letter. Jesus, they're threatening to sue me. I don't know what to do. Please, call me back. He sounded wrecked. And something in me did soften, but only a little. Not enough to forget, just enough to remember that he was still human. Flawed, flailing, foolish. But human. I didn't call him back. Instead, I called the insurance company myself. Thank you for the update, I told them. I'm not seeking criminal charges. I just want my legal status restored and the record set straight. The woman on the phone paused, then said gently, Mrs. Gray, you've handled this with more grace than most people would. I didn't feel graceful. I felt tired. After I hung up, I went to the kitchen and stood by the sink, staring out the window at the backyard. The wind had picked up. The oak tree swayed slightly. The same tree Derek had planted the year Charles was born. Everything comes back eventually, even lies, even roots. That weekend, Sarah came over. She didn't speak as she walked in, just hugged me tightly. Coffee? I asked. She nodded. We sat in the kitchen with our mugs, steam curling into the morning air. He told me everything, she said finally. He cried. I raised an eyebrow. Not loudly, she added. Quiet. The kind of cry that hurts more to watch than to hear. What did he say? That he thought you'd never forgive him. I haven't, I said. Not yet. She nodded. I didn't say you had to. We were quiet for a long time. Then she asked, if he paid the money back, all of it, would that change anything? I thought about it. Truly thought. No, I said. Because the money was never the point. What he stole wasn't in dollars. It was in trust. In the right to live my life without someone else quietly erasing it? She nodded again, but this time her eyes welled. I wish he were better, she whispered. So do I. I reached for her hand. But you are. That night, I sat at my writing desk, not the one near the phone, but the old one in the den, where I used to balance budgets and write birthday cards and keep our family running like a quiet little ship. I took out a blank sheet of paper. I didn't write Charles. I wrote myself. You are not small. You are not foolish. You are not a victim. You are a woman who gave and was taken from, and still chose to live. Then I folded the note, placed it in the folder beside the rest. Let the truth grow heavy. I could carry it now. By Monday morning, Charles was knocking on my door again, not calling, not texting, not hiding behind polite emails or carefully worded notes. This time, he stood there in person, shoulders slouched, eyes red-rimmed. He looked like a man stripped of every illusion he'd ever clung to. And now he wanted something more terrifying than forgiveness. He wanted to be seen. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Just a moment, I said. I want to be clear. He nodded once, slowly. I'm not welcoming you back. I'm hearing you out. There's a difference. He lowered his gaze. I understand. We sat on the porch, not inside. He didn't ask, and I didn't offer. He took a deep breath, like someone about to jump into freezing water. They're threatening court, he said. I know. I've been on the phone with lawyers. They say if I return the money, I might avoid charges. You might, I said. Silence. Then, quietly, I can't pay it all at once. I used most of it to pay down the mortgage, some debts, some other things. Luxury SUVs? His mouth twitched. Not a smile, a flinch. I let it sit there. I was going to tell you, he whispered. Eventually. But once the money came, it was like this. This weight lifted. And I thought, maybe this is what life's supposed to feel like. Easy. I sipped my tea. And then? Then it got quiet, he said. And I realized the silence wasn't peace. It was shame. I said nothing. He looked up. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, I said. Because I haven't. He nodded. But I do want to fix it, he said. I don't know how, but I want to try. I tilted my head slightly. Why now? He looked out at the street. Because Sarah won't answer my calls. Because I walk through my house and every room feels like a lie. Because every time I see your handwriting, I remember how many times you signed something for me without reading it. Because you trusted me. And you counted on that. Yes. Another pause. Mom, he said, you didn't deserve what I did. No, I agreed. I didn't. I don't want this to be the last chapter between us. I looked at him, long and hard. You don't get to decide that. He nodded again. I know. We sat in silence. A neighbor walked by with their dog. The world kept turning. After a long while, I said, You'll repay the money. That's non-negotiable. I will. You'll write a formal statement to the insurance company acknowledging what you did. I already started. You'll have no say over my estate, no access, no promises. That's done. I understand. And if you ever forge my name again or speak on my behalf without permission, I will press charges. I won't think twice. I deserve that. We sat there, letting the terms hang in the air. He looked at his hands. Can I ask you one thing? What? If I do all of that, if I keep showing up, do I still get to call you Mom? I looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy he used to be, the one who brought me dandelions from the yard, the one who wrote me Mother's Day poems with crooked spelling and too many hearts, and I saw the man he'd become, the one who thought love was a currency and trust a tool. He was both. And I? I was tired of being erased. "You can call me Joan," I said. "Just Joan. For now." It didn't take long for the rest of the family to find out. Not because I told them. I didn't owe anyone that. But word travels fast when something burns, and what Charles had done left a wide trail of smoke, enough for even the distant cousins and polite holiday-only relatives to catch the scent. At first, there were whispers, a call from my sister-in-law in Tampa. "Is everything all right?" she asked, in that saccharine tone that pretends concern but drips curiosity. I told her yes, and nothing more. Then a message from Charles's ex-wife, Dana. We hadn't spoken in years, not since the divorce. She'd always been kind to me, but once the papers were signed, she kept her distance. Still, her message was brief, pointed. "He's always been clever. But this? I'm sorry, Joan. You didn't deserve that." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I didn't need confirmation anymore. The truth had already settled into my bones like winter air, cold, sharp, but familiar. And then slowly, the silence began to crack. One neighbor, Mrs. Lindley, dropped off a casserole. "You've been through enough," she said, her voice low. "You don't need to cook on top of it." We'd never been close. Mostly nods and the occasional shared glance at the mailbox. But that small gesture, plain and heavy in a foil-covered dish, was more honest than any apology. And Sarah, dear, steady Sarah, stayed close. She called every other day, stopped by when she could, and never once pushed. She understood something Charles never had. Love doesn't need proof, but it does need presence. "I told him I need time," she said one afternoon, her coat still buttoned as she sat at the edge of the couch. "He said he understood." "Did he mean it?" I asked. "I think," she said carefully, "he means it as much as he can right now." I nodded. That was enough for now. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of erasure, of being forgotten in the background. This was the stillness that comes after a storm, when the debris has been cleared and the sky is trying to make sense of itself. One afternoon, I stood in the hallway and looked at the mirror that had hung there for 30 years. For the first time, I saw myself not as someone waiting, for a call, for a visit, for love that didn't come, but as someone returned to her name, her breath, her place in the world. My reflection was older, but not smaller. I no longer needed Charles to call me Mom, because I had called myself back. The letter from the county arrived with no fanfare, no ceremony, no gold seal or embossed apology, just a single-page notice folded neatly with the header, "Correction of record. Verified living status." It stated that, effective immediately, the erroneous death registration filed under my name was nullified, my legal identity restored, benefits reinstated, Social Security unfrozen, Medicare active again. It was clinical, cold. And yet, when I held it in my hands, I wept. Not because I needed proof I was alive. I knew I was. I'd lived every minute of these long weeks, fully, painfully, stubbornly alive. But something in that paper felt like justice. Quiet, official justice. I placed it in the folder marked Truth, then closed it, tied it with a ribbon, and tucked it away in the hall cabinet. Not to forget, but to let rest. Later that week, Sarah came by with groceries and a pie she didn't bake but claimed she did. I didn't call her out on it. We sat at the kitchen table, sunlight pouring through the window, and she asked, "Do you feel different now that it's all done?" I sipped my tea. Not different, just heavier in a way that makes me stand straighter. She smiled. That sounds like you. After lunch, we trimmed back the ivy on the south side of the house, something I hadn't done in years. We worked in silence, hands moving through the thick tangle of leaves, she on the ladder, me below with the shears. At one point, she paused and said, "He's repaying it, slowly. The insurance company, I mean. He took out a loan." I nodded. "He'll have to live with the cost for a long time. He knows. And you?" She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "I still don't trust him. But I'm not angry anymore. I don't want him to disappear. But I don't want to lose myself trying to pull him back either." "You're wiser than I was at your age," I said. "No," she replied. "I just had a better teacher." That night, I found myself sitting on the porch, alone. The air was cooler now. Autumn finally settling into the bones of the neighborhood. Leaves scattered on the steps. Somewhere down the block, a wind chime moved gently, like distant bells. I thought of Derek. He would have been furious, not just at Charles, but at me for staying quiet so long, for letting the erosion happen little by little, thinking I could patch it with kindness. He once told me, "Love isn't a plaster wall. It's a foundation. If it cracks, everything above it starts to shift." I hadn't listened. But now, finally, I was pouring new concrete, carefully, quietly, without his hands, but still with his voice in the back of my mind. The stars came out one by one, and I didn't go inside. There was no more hiding, no pretending, no waiting to be remembered. I was here. I was home. The last time Charles came over, he knocked softly, not like before. Not the angry, desperate pounding of a man demanding to be heard. This time it was almost polite, hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he belonged on my porch anymore. I opened the door, and there he was. Hair longer, shirt rumpled. But something in his eyes had changed. Not guilt, not performance, something quieter. Like a man who'd been walking in the wrong direction for so long, he finally stopped and looked back. "I won't stay long," he said. I stepped aside anyway. He followed me into the living room. We didn't sit. He held something in his hand, a folded envelope. "I made the first full repayment," he said. "The loan came through. I sent the confirmation to the insurance company, but I thought you should have a copy." I took the envelope, didn't open it, just nodded. He stood awkwardly, glancing at the photo on the wall. Sarah's graduation. Me beside her in that blue jacket I almost didn't wear. He looked at it a long time. "She looks so much like you now," he said. "No," I replied. "She looks like herself." He smiled, but it didn't last. "I've been going to meetings," he said. "Financial counseling. A support group, too. Not for fraud. They don't really have those. But for people who lost themselves chasing the wrong things. Is it helping? It's uncomfortable," he said. "But that's probably good." We were quiet. Then, almost in a whisper, he asked, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" I didn't answer right away. He didn't rush me. Finally, I said, "I think you stopped being a good one a long time ago. But people can turn around. They just don't always like what they find when they do." He looked at the floor. "Fair enough." He moved to the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. I don't expect anything. Not forgiveness, not visits. I just wanted to look you in the eye and say it myself. Say what? That I buried the best part of my life. And I'm sorry. He left before I could respond. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I sat down in my chair, placed the envelope on the table, and let the silence wrap around me like a familiar coat. I'd spent so much of my life speaking gently so others wouldn't feel the sharpness of their own actions. So much of it smoothing over what should have been confronted. But not anymore. I wasn't here to disappear quietly. I lived. And in living, I reclaimed everything I was taught to give away. My time, my voice, my name. Later that week, Sarah and I drove out to the coast. It was windy, gray, the kind of day tourists avoid but locals love. She brought sandwiches. I brought a blanket. We sat on a rocky overlook, the sea churning below. She didn't ask about Charles, and I didn't offer. Some silences are better left whole. Instead, we talked about her future, where she might work after law school, whether she'd stay nearby or take that job in Seattle. She was hopeful, nervous, excited, all the things I used to be once. At one point, she reached over and took my hand. "You saved yourself," she said. "Not many women your age can say that." "I didn't save myself," I said. "I stopped giving the best of me to people who used it like spare change." We stayed until the wind grew colder, then packed up and drove home. The kind of quiet drive that doesn't need music or small talk. Just the hum of the engine and the company of someone who sees you whole. When we pulled into my driveway, Sarah hesitated before getting out. "I want to write about you one day," she said. "Not your name, not the details. Just what you did. What it means to start over when everyone thinks your story is already written." I smiled. "Then write it well." "I will." She kissed my cheek and left. I went inside, poured a cup of tea, and sat by the window as dusk settled in. No photos in my hand, no phone waiting to ring. Just the simple, defiant quiet of a woman who refused to vanish. I am Joan Gray. I was never gone, and I will never disappear again. If this story moved you, even just a little, share it. Let it sit in someone else's hands the way it sat in yours. There are women out there who need to be reminded. It's not too late. You are not too old. And you're allowed to take your life back. Leave a comment. Send it to someone, or just say, "I see you." That's enough.